Did I achieve my goals for 2024? As a mastering engineer, I've had some really amazing things happen this year, some great accolades and things which have come my way, which I think is super humbling and pure, just happened, it's just luck, okay? But there's also been some things that I've worked hard towards and some things that I've worked on which haven't worked as well, and I want to share that with you. Now, I'm going to start with this YouTube channel. At the start of this year, I said the first 3 months of the year, I'm going to release 20 videos a month. And this was a great learning experience. And it grew the channel immensely. But it soon made me realize that YouTubing, quote unquote, it's like a trap, okay? Because what happens is you need to feed the algorithm. You need to create content which feeds this sort of sensationalism in clicking and getting people in and getting views for the sake of sustaining the channel. And I didn't like that. So I made a conscious effort to say, I'm going to continue doing YouTube for me, the things I enjoy, the things I'm learning at the studio. It sort of brought up the happy sort of accident of the updated mastering technique series, where as I'm going through sessions, I'm sharing things that I'm learning, and that was great. But I also realized the longevity of it is only in my ability to communicate information to an audience. And YouTube is a gatekeeper for that, which is okay and acceptable to a point, but long-term, I didn't enjoy that. So I set up a newsletter, and that newsletter has been incredible. There are 2,500 subscribers to the newsletter, a 60% open rate, and people love what I'm putting out there. So the newsletter was a huge success in terms of connecting with the community and getting ideas out that otherwise, if I just put it on YouTube, was gate-kept through an algorithm, and I didn't enjoy that. So if you want to join the newsletter, it's the best newsletter for working audio professionals. There's a link in the description below. Adjunct to that, or adjacent to that, was the Panorama Academy. I released 3 masterclasses this year, and 160 students took part in these masterclasses. I think they were wildly successful because there was only 3 people who asked for refunds, and these masterclasses allowed me to do long-form content without the constraints of thinking of thumbnails and titles, of just the pure information, of the raw information of what I needed to get out and what people were asking for to help them in their journey. And those 3 masterclasses were the STEM Mastering Masterclass, the Advanced Mastering Detail Masterclass, that was probably the most asked for one, and the Studio Flow Masterclass, which was all my communications and project workflow communications in email for my business. And that way people could take that and learn from it and apply it in their own audio businesses. So all in all, the education side of what I do was a success and a big learning curve. So YouTube like this, talking head, doesn't suit the algorithm. However, it does help me communicate with the audience and grow a value-rich connection where it's based on things we both enjoy, things we like exploring, rather than what's the next rage bait, click title, thing that I'm going to put out there on YouTube, because that became, in the first 3 months, very unbearable. Now, I'm going to talk about developing my mastering skills. Now, developing my mastering skills, I actually made a huge error this year. I always set out every year to learn my tools better. If there's any tools I haven't read the manual to, if there's any techniques, if there's any processes I don't know about, I make a conscious effort to train myself to push the boundary on those things, to learn harder, better, deeper, ask peers, ask mentors, to develop it. A big thing I made an error on was going down the rabbit hole of clipping. This year I made 9 videos on clippers, and each of these things I learned something new, but it was for such a minute part of the overall process of my work that I wasted a lot of time going down far too deep a rabbit hole. So I think in terms of developing my skills, I developed as an engineer, definitely yes. The clipping side of things, I think, was a bad distraction. And a distraction where there was diminishing returns. So I wasn't, in hindsight, excuse me there, I'm not too proud of myself that I fixated so hard on one particular topic. Next year, I'm going to give myself time boundaries for learning or exploring different skill sets. So that way it doesn't occupy my 6 months of the year just looking at clippers. That's just a waste of time. Now, with that though, when I was when people kept requesting me do an advanced mastering details masterclass, planning the curriculum for that helped me push myself to develop and research a little bit more. And there was some really interesting things which came about there that I learned in the process, namely with mid-side EQ and how phase relationships between the side signal and the mid signal, when you're EQing the side signal, can actually move around the stereo field. And there's a video on that. I'll leave a link in the description. And the second thing was about my practices when it came to using compression. I can't remember the YouTuber, but I will leave a link in the description below. They did a really great video on compression, which got my head thinking and then put me down a rabbit hole using FabFilter Pro C2 for managing my compression. And that extrapolated out into some other practices, which I go through in the masterclass. So that part of developing my mastering skills was pretty healthy, being pushed to go, hey, can you articulate all your advanced mastering details into a masterclass? Putting the curriculum together helped push me and drive me in my skill sets. So that was really good. Mixing, in terms of my skill sets, I'm still talking skill sets. Towards the tail end of this year, I started to work harder on my vocals in terms of using repitch and vocal line, namely repitch for managing the volume levels and doing a little bit of tuning. I think that was a healthy introduction to my skill sets. Something I said I would do, which I did not do, was work on my guitar mixing. And Mike Trebeskov, one of my good friends, has a masterclass out on that. I have to take that masterclass because I really want to push myself, and I'll document that for you next year. And in addition to that, Atmos mixing. I didn't move into my new space this year, which is unfortunate, but that's something I'm going to push hopefully towards the tail end of next year after I get the new space set up. Finally, the actual mixing and mastering side of the business. It was gangbusters this year. There were 755 mastering projects, so that includes albums and EPs. That was crazy busy. And there were 96 mixes I completed for the year. Now, with all of that, some things I learned for myself. And that is, I need to be a little bit stricter with my time boundaries when it comes to mixing and mastering. Often, just because the work's there, I would end up working a lot later than I like. So instead of doing 6 mastering sessions in a day, I might do 8 or 9. And I always, whenever that starts to happen, it happens every few years where my books fill up really heavy, that I have an overflow in the days. It burns me out. And recently I was really burnt out. I was out the whole last week with fever, medication, like I was really badly done. So I think in terms of, did I achieve my goal? Yeah, I mastered a lot of records. I mixed a lot of records, but I burnt myself out in the process badly. So that's something to be conscious of. The cool thing that happened this year, though, is that I got to work with a lot of really cool, unique producers from all around the world. Jordi Willem on the Trapestrano record for Michelle Maciel and her single Playboy as well. That was nominated for a Latin Grammy. It didn't win the Grammy Award, but it was nominated, which is a great accolade. Collie Budd's album, Take It Easy, that's been nominated now for Reggae Album of the Year, which is in February next year at the Grammy Awards, which I hope it wins. That was a humbling experience again to be a part of. The Lex album, which recently dropped in Greece, was the most streamed. Every song on that album was in the top 11 streamed songs on Spotify in Greece for the whole week. Now, each song has almost about 2 million streams. It is a huge album, a great success, and a credit has to go there to Quicksilver, the producer who brought me on board. There are dozens of examples like this where there are great records that came through the studio. So ultimately, in a recap, did I achieve my goals for 2024? I think I went on a journey in 2024 that realigned my values and where I need to be looking towards. And those are mainly creating systems of information, because I enjoy learning, but creating systems of information that can communicate with you guys, the audience, efficiently and effectively. So I learned that. My goal was to go big on YouTube. I realized that is a dead-end path. So for me, it was a goal that sort of got shifted into building the newsletter. So I'm happy I did that. The masterclasses were a great vessel to engage with information and really thoughtfully put together dense information for people to consume. So that was a good success. I think the biggest failure for the year would have to be my skill development and not being stricter on myself with my time. Skill development, I went down too many rabbit holes. Not cool. And time-wise, with mixing and mastering, I blew out my calendar, which isn't a bad thing. I think it's more for myself next year to start looking for outside help to help me in the process a bit more. I've got my mix assistant who's helped me set up the mixes, but with mastering, that takes up most of my time. So I need to be a bit more open-minded to expanding what I'm doing, but in a positive way that, and this is something I'm conscious about. So this is sort of a diary entry for me to like sort of tell myself and tell the audience that my intention with, especially the mastering side of things, and this is what scares me a little bit, is to scale it in a way that absolutely does not compromise the quality, because I will never compromise the quality. If that means that this is where the ceiling is, that's fine. But if I can open up my services to more people, that is great, but never, never, never at the cost of the quality of the work I'm doing. So that's my wrap up for 2024. It's an interesting one. Thank you for connecting with me on this. And until next time, take care.